Good morning, everybody. It's me. This is Jamal Edwards. It is about 10:45 on March the 30th, 2020. I had a call scheduled that I posted on LinkedIn and sent some emails out about for 8 o'clock this morning to kind of just check in with folks and to share some insights as we all are coping through this coronavirus situation. As it turns out, apparently 8 a.m. was not the right time for the call on a Monday morning. So I will retool and readjust. First coping skill tip is it's not a failure unless you quit. So I'm going to look into some different times to launch the call because I got some emails and some notifications saying folks were going to join, but I'm guessing things came up as it did for me. Even last night, I found out a friend of mine that I went to high school with in Detroit died from the coronavirus. So Sunday evening was a really rough evening for me. So I can understand how stuff might have happened for other folks and maybe it prevented them from making the call or who knows what they woke up to on Monday morning. So I'm going to look into a different time for that. But I decided I was going to go ahead and record the material I was going to be prepared to discuss this morning, just for the benefit of those folks who might check in to listen to the video but didn't have time to join a call. And I'll try to keep it brief. When I made the post on LinkedIn, I said I'd be prepared to talk about a couple of things for sure. And those 5 things were anything I posted on LinkedIn, which if there's no one here with questions, I'm not going to have to deal with that. And then, of course, the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, otherwise known as the FFCRA, which was recently passed by Congress, as well as the CARES Act, which was just signed into law this weekend by the president. Some insurance issues that I've talked about on LinkedIn that I think are important, and just briefly some coping skills. So I'm going to talk about those really quickly, skipping number 1 around my LinkedIn post because that was just to answer questions about things I've been posting about. And if you don't have any questions, then I won't answer them. However, if you do have some questions after you watch the video, feel free to shoot me an email or a link or a direct message or anything like that, and I'll answer those questions then. On the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, there were 2 bills passed recently by Congress and signed into law by the president. The first is the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which was really focused at dealing with employment-related issues primarily. It dealt with a whole bunch of other things as well, but for our purposes, that's the bill that really had to do with work for the most part. And it, primarily kind of mandated employers provide their employees with paid sick leave. At least if you're an employer with 500 or fewer employees. It was really directed at small and medium-sized businesses. I imagine they've got some other things in the work for the larger businesses, but for the many people, like a lot of my clients who depend on small and medium-sized businesses, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act is really important. First, most importantly, it requires that most employers provide their employees with up to 80 hours or 2 weeks of paid sick leave for any absences related to the coronavirus, essentially. There are a ton of employment lawyers that have posted very specifically on it. So if you have questions about that, feel free to shoot me a message and I'll shoot you links to the details on it. But essentially, those are the important points: 2 weeks of paid sick leave, 80 hours or the equivalent. You can ration that or pro rata that for part-time employees based upon their average working hours for the prior period. But essentially, you've got to pay them for 2 weeks. If they are sick, if they are quarantined by executive order or local order or anything like that, or if they're caring for a loved one. So essentially, it requires all of us small and medium-sized businesses to pay our employees for 2 weeks for any absences related to the coronavirus. So for a lot of us who are in jurisdictions where there's a mandatory shelter-in-place order, that triggers the 2 weeks sick leave. If your employees aren't the kind of employees that you would deem essential under those orders where they have to come to work to kind of keep your basic operations going, or and that's assuming you're a business that's in one of the categories of businesses that the government, your particular local government or state government, has declared as essential, a minimum basic operations or something like that. Those kind of terms are the ones that are being used in these local orders. If you're one of those businesses that, gets to stay open, but you have to reduce your workforce, or if you can only bring people to work if they're really essential to kind of keep the basic operations of your business going, everyone else you have to have stay home, and they are eligible for that 2 weeks paid sick leave if they're sick or not. And obviously, if they are sick, then same thing. If they're working and you require them to come to work and they get sick, then they get the paid sick leave. So it's 2 weeks of paid sick leave. It also extends the FMLA, which normally didn't apply to employers that had 50 or fewer employees. Now it applies to everybody with 500 or fewer employees with respect to this coronavirus absence. So if you have employees who are caring for a loved one and they need time off to do that, or if they are sick and they need time off to do that, then they get the same benefits they would have gotten under FMLA, which most employers, if small business or otherwise, are familiar with. FMLA is the Family Medical Leave Act that gives them some job protection, even if they don't get paid during the leave, to take time off to go care for a loved one in their immediate family or for themselves for a medical reason. And you have to protect their job during the term of their leave. So that also extended to people who are impacted by the coronavirus, either through illness, shelter in place, or something like that, or a loved one. So that's something you really need to look into. If you got questions about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, feel free to shoot me a message. I can link you up with some really great employment lawyers. I might be able to answer them myself, but I'm not your lawyer. This isn't legal advice. This is me sharing information as a business executive and executive coach. I just happen to be a lawyer, so I understand this stuff a little bit better than a lot of other people do. But if you need specific legal advice on it, I, of course, own a law firm, part of a law firm, and I know a bunch of lawyers, so I can get you in touch with people that could help you really, really quickly and really, really inexpensively. The CARES Act, which is the second bill that was signed, really just put into place this weekend, really deals more with the individuals. It's the stimulus bill that's supposed to be sending checks out to many people. Of course, it's income limited, so a lot of us won't be eligible for it, but a lot of our staff, personnel, contractors, people like that might be eligible for it. For folks under $75,000 a year, they get a check, and I think it caps or phases out at $90,000 a year, and I think those limits get doubled if it's for a married couple. But in any case, that's the bill. The CARES Act is the one that authorized the sending of these checks, the direct payments from the government to individuals. It is also the bill that really did a lot of things for small businesses like mine and like yours, I'm sure, where it really is requiring the SBA to step up and to deliver some liquidity into the economy in two ways. One, it was already kind of doing, but it's doing a little bit more, the economic disaster injury loans, EDILs, where you can get loans from the SBA to help cover, relief from a disaster, which this coronavirus has certainly been declared a disaster in many, many jurisdictions, almost every state at this point, where you can get loans to actually help cover losses, like really, truly incurred losses as a result of the disaster. And the second is this paycheck relief loan program, which is a little bit more targeted. It streamlines and it seems to like mandate the SBA and SBA lenders. These are loans you get directly from a bank versus the economic disaster injury loans you get directly from the SBA. But the 7A paycheck loan program comes directly through banks that are approved by the SBA. They are required now to give you loans up to 250% of your average monthly payroll. And so I think they look back over the last 12 months, see what your average monthly payroll expense was, and then you're entitled to get a loan, really low interest. I think it's capped at 4% for 250 times that amount. Interestingly enough, and thank God for this, it also applies to sole proprietors, independent contractors, LLCs, S corps, whatever. Any of those forms of small businesses, you're eligible to apply for this loan, and most banks should give it to you. The SBA will guarantee it. You got to obviously follow the requirements, make an application, and submit the required documents. But it's up to 250 times your average monthly payroll over the past year, really to encourage you not to lay off people. So it's a loan when it starts, and the goal is to encourage you not to lay off employees. And if you honor that request of not laying off employees, then the loan can be converted into a grant such that it's forgiven. So it essentially is intended to give you a couple of months of cushion for your payroll. 250 times your average monthly payroll is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So it, in a sense, is giving you some cash to help get through maybe 2 to 3 months of payroll. If you're having some dips in liquidity, low or slow paying clients, customers, things like that, then it's intended to help you with that. So you should really reach out to your bank. If you're an existing SBA borrower, definitely reach out to your current SBA lender, because that's the easiest place I think to go. It also requires, if you're an existing SBA borrower, it requires the lenders for existing and loans that were approved pending at the time this bill was passed. It also requires them to defer your payments. I think it's up to a year. I can't remember exactly the amount, but you should reach out to your SBA lender. If you're an existing SBA borrower, you should reach out to your SBA lender contact and ask if they're participating in this deferment program, which I think everybody has to participate in. Of course, all of this stuff was just done literally within maybe 24 hours to a couple of days. So the implementing regulations, all the details and how this is really going to work haven't even been written for the most part. Most of us are all interpreting statutes, looking at guidance, looking at what's being said by the secretaries that are responsible for these particular departments, the president, that kind of stuff, and trying to figure out how this is going to work. But in theory, this is how it's supposed to work. And if you have specific questions, shoot me a message. I can get you in touch with somebody who can answer them more specifically than I can. But I wanted to make sure you knew about those two bills and generally how they might apply to people who are watching this video. There's other stuff in those bills that I'm not covering because I don't think it's relevant for people who are going to be watching this video, but there's much more in it. And if you have questions about that, you can talk to your lawyer, you can call your congressman, you can talk to a number of people. There are tons of articles being written about them for you to get some more detail on how those are working. The next topic I wanted to talk about real quickly was insurance issues. I've had it come up for a few of my legal clients who are wondering if their business insurance, a lot of business insurance policies have business continuity insurance or disaster relief or recovery insurance included in their business policy. Sometimes it's in your property policy. It might also be in your commercial general liability policy. They can be endorsements added in to any number of those kinds of policies, or sometimes you can just buy a policy outright just for business continuity or disaster interruption, things like that. A lot of those policies are written in such a way that if you look at them on first glance, you'll assume, or your agent might assume or tell you, they don't apply and you don't have coverage, because a lot of them are written in such a way as to exclude coverage for disasters or interruptions that are related to a, quote, virus. In fact, I've seen several policies where virus is an excluded condition. But I've also seen a few lawsuits being filed. I've seen some articles being written challenging this. I've seen some podcasts where lawyers like me and insurance brokers have been arguing about it. And at the end of the day, it's going to be up to some judges and some juries to decide. And so I say all that to say, I wouldn't assume that whatever you're being told is correct, because as you know, most insurance policies are contracts. Most contracts are governed by state law, and every state's law is different in the United States. How we interpret things in Michigan versus how we interpret things in Texas or Illinois or California, completely different. So there's some states that view those exclusions very narrowly, some that exclude them very broadly, some interpret property differently, some interpret the term loss or disaster differently. So I wouldn't assume that just by looking at the document and reading the words on the document, you know what they mean. And this is generally the case for a lot of contracts. Most of them are subject to interpretation. And this is one of those situations where I don't know that anything that was written before this happened was really intended to apply specifically to this situation, because I don't think anybody ever imagined something like this would happen in the United States. So what the courts are going to do with that, I don't know. But I think it's something worth looking into if your business is suffering some significant losses. I think you should talk to a lawyer, talk to your insurance broker, your insurance agent, and your insurance carrier and see what you can work out. Because at the end of the day, like most things that get challenged in the courts, a lot of them settle because nobody wants to deal with the uncertainty. Nobody wants to deal with the cost and the expense. So sometimes insurance companies might say, let me go ahead and work out a payment to avoid a lawsuit. You obviously will have to compromise as well. Or you may take them to the mat. I've had a lot of lawsuits. We've taken people to court and we win. And you win, and at some point you get your money and you get proven correct. So I wouldn't assume that just because the plain language seems to suggest that it's not included or not covered, that it's not covered. I'd look into that very carefully. Speaking of which, I also did a post recently about force majeure. The ABA wrote an article about force majeure clauses. For most of the non-lawyers that see this, or non-French speakers, you probably like, what is he talking about? But many business leaders, executives understand there's always a clause in almost every contract that says if something happens beyond our control, an act of God, something like that, the parties may be excused from performing or from delays or penalties or things like that. That's what force majeure means. It's an act beyond our control that is excusing one or both parties' ability or obligation to perform under a contract. There's a whole lot of lawsuits being filed trying to figure out, does that apply to the coronavirus? The ABA published a piece on it. It's on my LinkedIn feed. Check it out. I can't give you specific answers because, again, I'm not your lawyer. This isn't legal advice. And ultimately, it depends upon what judge, what state, and what the facts of your case are. But I say that all to say, like the insurance, I would not assume that it does not apply to you. So I go talk to a lawyer. I'd go talk to the parties to the contract, the people on the other side, see if you can work it out, what they're thinking, what you're thinking, because a lot of folks will resolve things that way. And at the end of the day, it's not clear. There's no clear-cut answer one way or the other. And those are the kind of things that typically require judges, and judges are expensive because they require litigation. So folks will work that out. My short answer is don't assume. Talk to a lawyer, look at your contracts carefully, and make a decision from there. But just don't assume that it doesn't apply to you. The last topic is coping skills. And obviously can't go through all of those today, but I was happy to share a few this morning, and I will share those in this video. The first coping skill I use to kind of get through this is I exercise. Now, gyms have been shut down all over the country, so that has made it incredibly difficult for me because I love working out in the gym and lifting weights and pumping iron, seeing my colleagues and workout friends. But nonetheless, I still exercise. So whether it's going out for a walk, a run, a bike ride, a swim if you have a pool, doing something to kind of get your blood going, to get your lungs filling and expelling air, just to take in some beautiful scenery if you're in an area where spring is sprung, so to speak. I live down here in Austin, Texas. I'm here in my guest house, which is vacant, so it's become my home office now because all my Airbnb and visiting guests are not coming since we've got a quarantine. But down here in Austin, it's beautiful. The weather's great, so I can get out. I can go for a run. I can ride a bike. I can do some exercises outside. Sometimes I go work out and lift weights in my garage. And I do that as a coping skill. It's good for my body. It's good for my mind. It's good for your spirit. It's good for you all around. It's a coping skill great for this time, but it's a coping skill that's great for any time you're going through challenges or even when you're not going through challenges. Taking care of your body is a great way to make sure you're better positioned to tackle and handle stress. So that's one coping skill I'd love to share with you. Meditation is another one. I know there are tons of videos out there about meditation that you can check into and explore all kinds of different ways to meditate, whether it be looking at a candle, whether it be closing your eyes and focusing on your breath, whether it be a walking meditation, whether it's a guided meditation. There's tons of options, but shutting your body and your mind down for 15 or 20 minutes to just enjoy some peace and some quiet, to kind of calm your thoughts. It's a great coping skill to explore too. The final one I'll share before I sign off is this: virtual exchanges and interactions with people. I did a virtual happy hour on Friday. I did a virtual brunch on Sunday. I found a way through FaceTime, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, all these things to reach out to people virtually, connect with them, share with them, explore with them like you would in person, but obviously it's not the same. But still, you can see their face, you can have a conversation, you can feel connected in ways you can over the phone or by interacting on social media. So it works in a personal context. It works in a professional context. I would encourage you to reach out to your clients and your customers by video sometimes instead of just by phone call, because seeing a face, seeing expressions makes the communication easier, but it also makes you just feel more alive, and it makes it more human and more personal. And the more human and more personal we make our connections, the better we feel about them. The better we feel, the easier it is to cope with the hard things in life. So that's my final coping skill for you. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful and useful, and I appreciate you for looking at it, checking it out. I'm going to retool the call and see if I can find a way to do the calls at a time that works for more people, or figure out why it didn't work for the people that said they were interested this morning, but whatever. You know, things happen, you adjust. It's not a failure unless you quit, and I'm not quitting. I'm here for you. I'm here to help. I appreciate you. I wish you the best. If you're interested in learning more about me or my practice, go to my LinkedIn profile, Jamal M. Edwards on LinkedIn. My Vistage Chair practice is linked in my bio. My coaching practice is linked in my bio. My law firm practice is linked in my bio. Shoot me a direct message. Reach out to me. Let me know how I can help. I'm happy to work with you directly if I can. I'm happy to have conversations for no charge at all, just to kind of share what I have to share and connect and see if we can help each other out. I'm not in this really for the money at this point. I'm in this for the connections and for the karma, the doing the good for others that I know will come back to me, because my heart's in the right place, and so is yours if you're watching this video. So have a great day. Happy Monday. Start the week off right. Take good care of yourself. Take good care of the people that you depend upon, like your staff, your employees, and your family. Be good to yourself, and have a great day. See you later.